Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Turn the Page. I'm Jen, your host today, and I'm here today with a frequent guest and friend of the show and of the library in general. Does many wonderful things for us. And he is here with a book today that really just blew my mind. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, hello. I'm Robert Ottone, and I am the author of The Vile Thing We Created, which is published by Hydra Publications.
It's so good. And I'm so glad I got to read it for this interview. Before we get into it too much in specifics, I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about, your journey to this book, because you've written about true crime as well, and like you've done a lot of short fiction. And I'm wondering, how it led you to this project, and if you could talk a little bit about, how writing true crime and horror are maybe different and similar, like how maybe it helps and how maybe it presents challenges. Like I'm wondering how those things kind of work together.
Sure. Yeah. So I started writing this right around the time of the pandemic really getting into full swing. I was already working on my young adult book, The Triangle, and my MFA program was winding down. So I finished my YA book, and I was like, okay, cool. And I started working on some other stuff. The MFA program ended, and then this kind of came to me because I was doing a lot of and as kind of we all were, like doing those like Zoom get-togethers with friends and stuff, and I was all for it because like I nobody was more like protective of me. Like I only just stopped wearing the mask going to public places and stuff. But like it was nice seeing my friends and like seeing their kids run around and stuff, and that kind of reminded me of like when they first started partnering up and excluding us single friends, and then once they started squirting out kids, how they started excluding the people who did not have kids and all of that stuff. And it just kind of like it was like opening up an old wound in a lot of ways at a time when I really didn't need that old wound open. And like I understand, of course, the changing of friendships and stuff, and like the evolution of everybody and whatnot, but like it hurt so much. I remember in the moment, like being excluded from all of these things with friends that I had since kindergarten. So that's kind of the seed of where this came from. And, my wife and I have had many conversations about being child free and whether or not we would ever have kids and stuff. And we are child free. That might change in the future. We don't know. We might adopt, who knows? But, it does come from a place of like my own fears of being a dad, and how like, I know that my wife would be a great mom, but I'm worried about myself, like selfishly, like what kind of a dad would I be? Like I like writing and I like smoking cigars, and I've never changed a diaper in my life. My niece and nephew, they're 10. I've never changed a diaper. Obviously they don't wear them anymore, but even in the case, like, no, thank you. That's gross. But yeah, so like, in terms of the true crime and the horror too, I think working in covering crime and covering different true crime cases and writing about them and learning about them and stuff, I can access my own fear a little bit better, especially when I was covering the Long Island serial killer and like walking where that person walked and seeing, at the time, they're not there anymore, but the memorials to the women, walking that area and seeing those things, and then thinking so much about the case and going there. This was the stupidest thing that I ever did. Was I would go to Gilgo at like 2-3 in the morning, and I would just walk around, which was, and by myself, no less. Like it was a really stupid idea, but I would walk around, and I remember just feeling that kind of like anxiety and fear, and just like letting it take me, and like putting myself in the headspace, even just like the tiniest bit of what maybe some of these people might have felt in that moment of terror. And walking that area at night is very creepy if you've ever been there. Even at like 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, it would be creepy. But at 2 or 3 in the morning, when it is dead silent, that really gets the skin crawling.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. And like it's even, when you go there for me now, like when I go there, now that when something terrible has happened, it sort of like colors the entire place a little bit for you. And that's very interesting to me, like so how do the true crime and horror sort of have, spoken to each other in those ways. Um, on the topic of the book, and all of these like societal concerns about like having children or not having children. One of the things that I think that this book gets really right is that like when it comes to these like big issues, like the ones that people see as like necessary life landmarks and stuff like that, that it could be really hard to know how you feel about it absence all of the outside pressures, like parents or your friends or like, whatever it is, like, and that's a huge decision to make without really knowing how you feel about something, and I think that's
Yeah.
something that the book gets really well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think about these things a lot. Like, even though we're not, I used to want to have kids. I used to want like a big family, and I used to want like a big, typical Long Island wedding and like all of this stuff. And then I met my wife, and I just kind of realized like you don't need those things. You don't need that like, absurd level of Long Island gaudiness that we see all the time at like every other wedding. Um, and it's just nice. It's like nice to just do your own thing and like be your own person, but also at the same time, like with the Ian and Lola, the couple in the book, like I didn't want them to feel like they made a decision just like out of the blue and like, oh, let's just have a kid. Like it's not Ian's decision or his want to have the children is a little less intelligent than Lola's approach, but he does almost immediately take a rational approach to it, even though like he does pitch the idea of having a kid while drunk. They do take the time and talk about it over the course of a few weeks or whatever. So they're not going into it blind, and they're certainly not having, a child to save their relationship or anything like that. It's the way they're looking at it is like, we're the best versions of ourselves right now. We're both ready for this. Which is what parents, I'm assuming, good parents do actually do. They want to create a life for someone else, not in the sense of like, oh, I'm so arrogant that I need a little me running around, but in the sense of like, you know what, like we're in a great place. Let's try and create a great life for another thing, boy, girl, whatever the case may be. Like, let's create a new life and let's try and give that a good life like we had, or provide the best we can and challenge ourselves to be better than our parents were before us. And I think that's kind of Ian and Lola's, decision making. It's less caving to societal pressure, but it is in a way, but it's also done in a way that's like a little more rational maybe, or like hopefully they, the fact that they think so much about it and talk so much about it makes that societal pressure like a little like lessened for them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's yeah, for sure. And like they do approach it like as intelligently as you possibly can, I think, as a couple. Like they kind of do all the right things, and and things still just like, go so poorly for them. One of the things that I really love about, oh, well, first off, I have to mention the pull quote from a friend of the show and a friend of yours, Clay McLeod Chapman, who said that it is like what to expect when you're expecting by Ira Levin. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty perfect. But that leads to my question, which is, like this kind of horror depends a lot on like paranoia, which is like a very slow burn type thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach like structuring that tension, if it makes sense? Because you got to walk like a clear, like a line between not letting things boil over, but like maintaining the reader's engagement,
Mm-hmm.
like how do you approach that?
I think it's almost like microdosing fear. So like giving like a little bit all throughout, and then something pops, like I always, if I'm watching a movie, right, and there's like a woman who's pregnant, I get like super tense if there's even the slightest possibility that she could fall down.
Yeah.
And like that always puts me on the edge of my seat. And like my wife can attest to this, like when it does happen, because of course it does. I always go, ah. It scares the hell out of me. So like having like little tense moments like that and then popping off with something big, like to me, that's a big thing. Like a pregnant woman falling down, God forbid, you know what I mean? Like you don't want that to ever happen. But like playing with and planting those little seeds of terror so that they all sprout, not only like in that moment, but they could sprout later. It could plant something later, even if it's something as simple as like, you know, going out into the backyard and finding your toddler standing there nude, covered in something slick and filthy, and just staring at the moon. Like something like that is like not, it's creepy, but it's not like, you know, it's not like in your face, super duper scary. But having moments like that where it's just like, oh man, why? Why did that happen? And like, why is that happening? And then, of course, like, hopefully the payoff works for people. But yeah, just like inserting those little things here and there while also like paying very close attention to, well, something needs to pop off. Like something needs to pop off. Even if it's like, you know, even if not all of those little things come to fruition in the end, a good majority of them hopefully do. And, you know, having that payoff is so much more rewarding when it's sprinkled throughout, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's handled really well here. It does kind of like tap into a lot of like my favorite horror traditions. Like one is this sort of like paranoid type of social horror, also like folk horror, you know, like the suburban sort of you know, take on it. Were there any other like types of horror? Oh, I guess, you know, pregnancy always like involves a little bit of body horror, you know.
Yeah.
So was that something
Yeah.
that you were thinking about too? Like
Yeah, I was thinking because like I don't think, you know, we don't ever experience body horror. Women do when they are pregnant. It's the ultimate body horror. Um, you know, you could have surgery or something, I guess, and I guess that's body horror. Like I've had stomach surgery, but like I was out like a light, dude. So I don't remember anything. But you know, I just remember like my sister telling me about having her twins, my niece and nephew, and I just remember like, and I talked to a lot of women about having children, whether it was through email or on the phone or texting, whatever. And they all told me different stories. And some of them were like, honestly, like the pregnancy was great. Having the kid took 20 minutes, and then like she sleeps all through the night and it's great, blah, 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 blah. To like, yeah, the first one was great, but the second one was awful. And they, you know, so like hearing all of these things and then hearing about like the leg cramps and just like the back pain and like all of these things that like women who may not have those things beforehand, it's just terrifying because there's something going on inside you. It's like the gestation of life. It's like, how is this real? And I still think about sometimes the first time I saw my niece and nephew kick in my sister's stomach, and it was the craziest thing. And it was so, I had my iPhone on her stomach and I was playing the song from Ghostbusters 2, the Your Love lifted me higher. And my nephew apparently liked it, and he was like dancing, and he did this, and I saw the phone go.
oh, that's so weird.
Yeah, it was the creepiest, grossest thing. But you know, it's just the fact that that's inside of another person is crazy. So, but then you know, again, like going in because Lola is African American, learning about the difficulties individuals, you know, women of color have with having kids was just like an avalanche of horror on top of the already existing body horror of being pregnant. And again, like, you know, I'm ignorant to these things. I don't know. I'm glad I know now because that gives me even greater respect for, you know, the childbirth process in general. But it's, I mean, not that I didn't have respect for it, but like, good God,
Yeah.
it's so intense. It's just so intense and so terrifying.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I haven't done it and I am terrified of it. And I do like really appreciate that this book is very aware of it as like a gendered experience, but also as one that is like influenced by race and how you're perceived by a medical system. That's an entire another source of horror, by the way, just like the medical system and how expensive having a child is.
Yeah. Oh
You know,
my God.
like, but like it's just not a good country for having kids.
And it's crazy too, because like, in the book, Lola has to be an advocate for herself, because as much as Ian can be an advocate for her, Ian has the kind of approach that I do, in that like, I'm not here to white knight and like protect everybody, but I am here to make sure that like you feel comfortable around me and feel safe around me. Like I'm not going out of my way to like, grandstand or anything, but like that's very much Ian's vibe too, because he knows he married a super strong woman in the same way that I know that I married a super strong woman who can very easily speak up for herself. So he doesn't have to do it for her. But when she does have to do it for her, to see like these institutional strange things happen, and she's like, no, like I need this. Like this is what I need. Like I don't want to go on this medication, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to do that. And it's like, I get it. Like and the fact that women have to do that, or that anybody really has to do that, is insane. One wonders if it's like that in France or Spain or any other country. I just don't know, but it seems pretty American. Seems like an American thing to me, but I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's so well done, and it is really oh gosh, I have to talk about the structure too.
Mhm.
Like the structure of the book, and I never really once thought about that a pregnancy has 3 trimesters, and like solid storytelling has a 3-act structure, like, and that was like not something I had ever thought about before this. Like, oh my gosh, like how did you happen upon like the structure? Like
I remembered my screenwriting classes and just the whole 3-act structure, and I was like, oh my God, trimesters.
Yep.
Bing, it just kind of went off, and I was like, yeah, that checks out. And in fact, the last thing that I wrote for the book was the prologue. That was the last thing that I wrote, because I was like, I need something. I want to put something that explains a little more of Lola's personal anxieties, so it doesn't necessarily fit within the 3 trimesters or whatever, but it does fit as a prologue. And I already had the epilogue anyway, so I was like, well, what's a few more pages? But yeah, it just made sense. I don't know, it was fun. It was fun doing that, and it was more fun to even think of like what I was going to call them. So when you get to the second trimester, or the second section of the book, and it's "and baby makes 3," it's about to hit the fan, even worse than it already has. And it's pretty bad before that.
Oh gosh. Could you talk a little bit about the cover?
Yeah.
Because the cover's fantastic. Um, did you work with the publisher on the cover? Did they bring options to you? Like what was your what is your role in choosing a cover, and how like I mean you must be, I imagine you're happy with it because it's like it rules, right? So yeah.
I'm over the moon with it. So the publisher, Hydra, the main dude, Tony Acree, they're in Kentucky. He got he got a total of 7 covers before this one, and he rejected 6 of them outright, because he was like, this is garbage. I did a little mock of like what I was thinking it could look like, right? And he showed me one that was like sort of kind of close to what I came up with, and he was even like, I hate this, but maybe you'll like it. So I looked at it and I was like, no, I also hate it. And so then I was like, listen, I have a wonderful artist friend. I published her with my small press. Her name is Alexis Macaluso. She wrote a fabulous, hysterical, and illustrated this book called Deeply Personal. So funny. Everything she posts on Instagram to me is just so funny, and she just blows my mind. So I went to her and I was like, hey, listen, like, how would you be interested in doing the cover for this book, and she drew 4 rough sketches, sent all 4 to me. We did a little Zoom meeting like this, and we just kind of, she showed me all 4, and all 4 of them were dynamite. They were already better than the one that I rejected that the publisher showed me. And then she kind of said, like, well, I could do this, and I have this picture, and I could do these kinds of manipulations and this, that, and the other thing. And that's how we ended up with this cover. And it's exactly what I would hope for and what I had been wanting. And she really knocked it out of the park. And I know my publisher is happy too. So, you know, I'm over the moon about it. I'm over the moon about the blurb on the cover, the font, the color. I didn't want it to look like every other horror book. And I don't like when horror books have that like aged look to them, like they're trying to look like an old book from the 80s. Like I really hate that, actually. So this, I told her the only kind of references that I gave Alexis was like, look at Sarah Langen's Good Neighbors, and look at I don't remember Rumam. It's like 2 summers ago, huge book. People in an Airbnb, and then the family shows up. It's the end of the world.
Oh, the Tremblay. No. Oh,
Rumam. I want to say that's his first name. Oh, it's right here on my shelf. Hang on. It's Leave the World Behind.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, so I gave her just those 2 references. And she went more the Sarah Langen route, and I was like, great, fabulous, I love it. And the back cover is cool too. I'm very, it hasn't really been shown anywhere just because it's, I'm not a huge fan of back cover text on books, but my publisher likes it. So I had to write some back cover text, which I don't love, but it's there and it's fine. It's, basically the listing on any of the websites where you buy the book is what it says on the back cover. So plus some more blurbs, but yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think Alexis Macaluso is just remarkably talented, and just her aesthetic is incredible, and her eye is incredible. And I hope she does more covers for people, because the reception to this one has been preposterous. People really like it, which makes me happy. And if that helps sell the book, then cool. I just hope people like what's on the inside, even half as much as they seem to like the cover.
yeah. I think they will. I think it earns its cover very well.
Oh, I like that.
So we will be seeing you soon in person, because you're doing an event at Barnes and Noble in a couple weeks. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm so excited and so honored that the Barnes and Noble in Bayshore, which is right on Sunrise Highway here on Long Island, has been nothing but sweet in like rolling out the red carpet to celebrate this book's release. Larissa, specifically at Barnes and Noble, has just been wonderful in coordinating this whole thing. And Clay Chapman and I will be in conversation. I'm so honored that he's coming out from the city to do this. And he's just such a beautiful, wonderful soul, and just such a funny guy, and just very sweet. And he honors me. He humbles me and honors me by doing it. And it's from 7:00 at night until 9:00 on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo.
Yay!
Yeah. So I will be drinking margaritas after the event, certainly. But it's going to be fun. We're going to have a little book talk and talk about each other's stuff. We're going to do a little reading. And then we thought we would throw it to you and Jessica to do like a little chatty interview type thing, and then open it up to the crowd, sign some books, bingo, bango, bongo. That's that.
Nice. Yes, I can't wait. I think it's going to be so much fun. And I have already pre-ordered my copy from bookshop.org, but I'm also going to be buying one at the event, because one is for a friend and one is for me. So thank you for coming by the show, and thank you for, sharing your event with us in a couple weeks. And as I'm sure at this point, you are always welcome back. So anytime that you have something you want to share, just please knock on our door.
Thank you. You're very sweet. I can't thank you enough. And I can't wait to see you guys in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited.
It's going to rule. It's going to be amazing.
All right. Margaritas after.
Absolutely. 100%. Listeners, okay, please pick up the vile thing we created. By the time that you hear this, it will be available at your favorite library or bookstore, wherever you like to get your books. So, do it. Go do it. Thanks for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.